again, what's the plan?
We use the word herd, right? Once you get to a certain number, it's going to go away.
We like the fact that there's a lot of cases. That's exactly how we're going to get herd immunity, population immunity.
You'll develop herd, like a herd mentality.
This is the plan, right? So the herd mentality, the herd immunity, let's say, to be super rosy in our assumptions, let's say in order for this to work, since this is what the president says is going to happen here, it's going to go away without a vaccine. It's going to go away with the herd, right? He means herd immunity. He says herd mentality. Forgive him. Let's forgive him all the false assumptions here, right? That aren't supported by the science. Let's just give him everything he says is going to happen. Let's say it's only 65% of the population you need infected. Let's say everybody who gets infected is immune. Let's just grant it to him. Well, do the math. We're 330 million people in this country. Under this plan, they'd need 65% of 330 million people to be infected. They'd need 215 million Americans to be infected. That's what they would aim for herd immunity. Well, right now, we've got roughly 6.6 million people infected in this country and roughly 200,000 Americans dead, which means our fatality rate cumulatively in this country is just under 3%. It's 2.97%. Of all people who've been diagnosed with COVID-19 in this country have died with it. If that fatality rate stays the same and we go for herd mentality, I mean herd immunity, if 2.97% of all the Americans who get infected die from this thing, which is what we've had so far, then what he's aiming for is 215 million Americans dead, 215 million Americans infected, 2.97% of them dead. That is 6,385,500 Americans dead. That would be what he's aiming for here. 6.4 million American deaths. Now, let's rosy up our assumptions a little bit. In terms of the fatality rate, right, this is a president who keeps lying about treatment, about hydroxychloroquine being a miracle cure, or maybe a miracle preventive, or who knows, it's just definitely the solution. Right? And the CDC's warning about how that probably does more harm than good. That Michael Caputo, who the Trump administration put in charge of the CDC, delayed the release of that report by weeks, while presumably bad doctors around the country who watch Fox News actually put their freaking patients on that stuff, right? This is a president and an administration in a conservative media universe that has lied all the time from the very beginning about whether there's a treatment for COVID or even a cure for COVID. No, hydroxychloroquine isn't it. Convalescent plasma, even when they forced through the approval of that so they'd have something to brag about at the Republican convention. No, the science isn't there on that either. There is no cure. There is no treatment. But let's be rosy about it. Again, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Right now, I said the United States overall cumulative death rate is nearly 3% of all people who've tested positive in this country have been killed by this disease. If that holds for this next stage of the Trump plan, that would mean that the Trump White House is planning to kill off more than 6.3 million of us. But again, let's be rosy. Let's say the therapeutics do come around, like they keep saying on Fox News and like the president says at the Republican convention. Let's say the U.S. death toll drops cumulatively to not 3%, but let's say drops to 2%. Or, you know what, let's be wildly optimistic. Let's say the U.S. cumulative death toll from people infected with COVID drops all the way to 1%. Even still, with this herd mentality, herd whatever, herd it'll go away plan, the president is planning, best case scenario, even if we triple our cumulative survival rate thus far, he is planning on killing off 1% of the population he wants to get herd infected. Right? How does that math work out? He's planning on killing off 1% of 215 million Americans who he wants to get infected, which means the White House plan, with all of the rosiest assumptions you can factor into it, is to kill off 2.15 million Americans, which is considerably more than 10 times the number of us who have died already. 2.15 million dead. That's the best case scenario. That's if everything goes great. That's the plan. The 1918 flu killed 675,000 Americans. World War II killed roughly 400,000 Americans. World War I killed roughly 115,000 Americans. The Vietnam War killed nearly 60,000 Americans. The new plan, what they're actually doing now, not just talking about, but doing now, is to stop trying to contain the virus, to let it just run through us as a population, because the more people are infected, the better. And honestly, because trying to stop infections has proved to be too hard for this president.